I'm going to welcome up our last speaker of the day. So this is Siobhan Bryan, CEO of the Muríosa Foundation. Can we give her a big round of applause?
Thank you.
Siobhan, how are you?
Delighted to be here, so thanks for the invitation.
Thanks a million for joining us. You're so good. Can you talk us through the foundation and explain what exactly it is?
Okay, so we're a disability service provider that is based here in Tullamore. We were formerly based in Moorabbey, so we still have a base in Moorabbey, but the headquarters of the organisation has moved to Tullamore just in the last 14 months, actually.
Wow.
So we were originally founded by the Sisters of Charity and Jesus of Mary. So if anyone here remembers Moorabbey or Delvin and South Hill, it's the same organisation that transferred from the religious order to an independent, voluntary, not-for-profit. So what do? We have just shy of 1,600 staff.
Wow.
Across Longford, Westmeath, Laois, Offaly and Kildare. Predominantly, we have some services in Meath and in the southwest, but mainly in the Midlands.
Yeah.
And we support primarily adults with an intellectual disability. We do have a small amount of services for children, so children's respite and children's preschool, and we also provide some alternative respite for children. But largely, if you come to work in the Muríosa Foundation, you can expect to work with adults with an intellectual disability.
Okay, fantastic. And what kind of career options are there?
Oh God, so of the 1,600 staff, the vast majority of the staff are frontline, and what I would say is there's different categories of staff. So I will speak to your a couple of presentations ago where representatives from the Laois Offaly ETB presented. So if you acquire the QQI level 5 care assistant, that qualifies you to be in what we call our support worker role.
Okay.
So that doesn't require you to go and do a full 3 or 4 year course in college. So that's one of the career options. The second career option is that to qualify as a social care worker. So that's in the qualified grades, and it is a registered profession with Corú. Just very recently became one of the registered professions with Corú. And that requires you to do the minimum of the 3 year ordinary degree. Now it's a number of years since I did mine, but it's in a variety. So obviously for students here in the Midlands, Athlone, Sligo, Galway, Dublin, Carlow, they're all doing the applied social studies course to qualify you as a social care worker.
Okay.
And then the third category of staff that works in frontline services is nursing. And largely for Muríosa Foundation, because we're an intellectual disability service, it's nurses who train specifically in intellectual disability. So it's called an RNID, a registered nurse in intellectual disability. Muríosa has historically been a school of nursing, so many nurses that work in the sector actually train through Muríosa, but now we're affiliated to Trinity College, and the nurses train academically through Trinity and then do placements through Muríosa.
Brilliant. And what does a typical day in the life of a support worker or a social care worker look like? What's involved? Okay,
so I suppose what I would start by saying is you're looking for somebody who's really interested in supporting and empowering a person to live their best life. So it's not about looking after, caring, feeling sorry for and saving a person.
Very important, I think, and to put it the way you've put it as well, very strongly.
Yeah. And I will, kind of talk to some of those characteristics, but ultimately the practical day-to-day is that you're supporting people to have ordinary lives in ordinary places.
Yes.
So if you think about your own life, and you think about every aspect of when you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night and what you do, to varying degrees, the people that we support require support in activities of daily living.
Yes.
So you could be literally very much in the background, provide minimal support to someone who's trying to get a job out in the community. Or you could require very full-on supports across the day, including feeding, changing.
24-hour kind of care.
Absolutely, 24-hour. And you're also the person, you have the absolute privilege as a support worker and social care worker to work, your place of work is a person's home.
Yes.
So your home still has all of the necessary cooking, meals and cleaning, but that's not really what drives and motivates people to come into this sector. It just happens to be one of the things that has to be done across the day. But really the focus is on supporting people to have a good life in the community that's in line with their will and preference.
And Siobhan, can you tell me about your own career? Because I'm really interested in this. I know you told me yourself you started from the bottom and you worked your way up. I'd love to hear about your own career.
So I suppose I'd start by saying as a very young girl, I was inspired by my cousin who was born with a disability. So she has Down syndrome. And we were born a month apart, and our lives, I'm 42, so our lives back then had very different trajectories just by the very nature that she was born with a disability, i.e. she had to go to the special school, she didn't get to participate in all the local activities, she wasn't a member of her local GA club and all those things, because the absolute expectation was you're different, you're special, and you go in a separate lane of traffic throughout your life. And I suppose that made me feel very passionate about the idea of why was she treated so differently.
100%.
So that was kind of my motivation early on. So when I did my Leaving Cert, I will say for all the students in the room who the traditional format of the Leaving Cert doesn't really sit with your skills, that was me. I went to secondary school in Rocherbridge. I was a middle and average student, didn't like studying the traditional maths, English, Irish curriculum, and made the decision that while it wasn't quite clear that I was moving to a career in disability, I knew that my skills were in supporting people that were maybe disadvantaged in life for whatever reason. So I went and did my degree in social care in Sligo. And then from very early on, I worked in disability services because I did one of my placements and knew that it was my absolute passion. And I would say for the social care programme that a lot of students and graduates move into other sectors and not necessarily the disability. I suppose we're trying to do a lot of work as an organisation now to promote careers in disability. And then I suppose I worked for a very short time in frontline services. I worked throughout college as a relief worker, and then within a year of graduating I was promoted into my first leadership role. And I've worked in frontline leadership, middle leadership. I went into some quality roles around HICWA, and then ultimately have found myself, ironically, sometimes I hate to hear the term CEO because I very much see myself as the person who has worked in the front line. But I would say to people that if a teacher was to predicted when I was in secondary school whether I'd have been in this job, I don't believe anybody would have seen that as a possibility. So I think career progression and opportunities, if you have and naturally possess leadership skills, an organisation like Muríosa will absolutely harness those skills and support you to go on the journey beyond frontline and into management.
That's great. It's such a brilliant story, and it's great to hear the first-hand experience of it as well. Siobhan, what kind of characteristics or personal traits do you think make for a good social care support worker who would excel and really enjoy the role? Okay,
so I would say you have to love people. People from all walks of life, because if you work in an organisation like Muríosa, you're going to be communicating with and supporting a person with a disability, you're going to be interacting and working with their families, you're going to have your colleagues, you're going to have managers, you're going to have the HSE, you're going to have HICWA coming in, so you really need to have that appetite to work with people.
Constant dealing with people.
That's definitely one of the key characteristics. We'd always love people who like to find a way to solve a problem, and it doesn't always have to be the traditional way of solving problems, so we're really open to people who come in with crazy ideas that let's have a discussion about it and see if it's an opportunity, because we really want to promote positive risk taking. We don't want to support people in a way that because they have a disability we say they're not able to do that or the risk is too high. We 100%. Need to be able to support people, and whatever risks we need to manage around that we'll do, but let's not use that as an excuse not to support the person.
100%. I think that's so important as well that you brought that point up. Siobhan, what kind of typical working hours and terms and conditions are involved, I suppose, then in this line of work?
Okay, so one of the things that we certainly find is that people don't fully appreciate that if you work for Muríosa Foundation, you are a public servant. So we are what we call a Section 38, so we're funded under the Health Act in a mechanism that makes us like an arm of the state. So if you're an employee of Muríosa, you'll be afforded all the same benefits as if you're a nurse in a hospital, a guard, member of the civil defence, so you're in the category of civil service, which means that you're fortunate that all of the pay awards and negotiations that happen between government and unions around public sector pay applies to you as a social care worker, nurse or support worker in Muríosa. So we have a full public service pension. Now I know, as I'm sitting looking at 16 and 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds, the last thing you think about is a pension, but believe me, you are the generation that needs to think about pensions, because the state's not going to be able to afford to pay everyone a pension by the time you're all ready to retire. We have a variety of different contracts. So we have, like, if you go to college and you decide to study social care, we're really keen for some students to come and work for us during weekends and summers. It's a great opportunity to get some exposure to the work. And then you have day hours and residential hours. So day is typically your Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, but it's not explicitly. So if a person wants support in the evening because there's some activity they want to do in the evening and it's not on during the day, well then we look for flexibility in the contracts. Salary-wise, I think it's really important to consider that the career as a social care worker is broadly equivalent to being a nurse or a teacher. So it's right up there with very competitive salaries. And the extra benefit that often people don't appreciate is that when you graduate from college with your social care degree, or if you do your QQI, and come in as a support worker, you'll be working weekends and evenings, and a lot of premium payments come with that. So if you want to work for a couple of years to save a few quid to head off travelling, you're going to earn significantly more than what you'll see on the consolidated pay scales, because every Sunday you get double time, every bank holiday you get double time plus time. Every sleepover, you do sleepovers and you would get paid the minimum wage for those 8 hours while you sleep in work. Wow. So lots of financial benefits, and if anyone wants to know more, we'd be happy to answer those questions. So I suppose, I don't know is there anything I've left out? So sleepovers, some live nights, 24/7 in the residential, and Monday to Friday primarily with our day services.
And can we talk then about career progression pathways within disability supports and the Muríosa Foundation?
Yeah, so there's a variety of different, I suppose I've densely focused on our career options in frontline services. We've lots of career options also, like in things like psychology, behaviour support, HR, finance, property and facilities. Like an organisation like Muríosa, like we have over 250 locations. We've almost 200 homes that people live in. So in order to have that many houses, you have to have a team that manages all the maintenance, and you have to have a HR department, finance, quality and risk. So there's lots of career options. But what I would say around internally is we have created a kind of mentorship program, whereas with regulations, you have to acquire 3-year supervisory or management experience to go into a formal residential leadership role. So what we do is we give people who are thinking about that option, and we give them some additional responsibilities in the frontline role. Some administrative tasks, maybe that they take some of their working time into supernumerary hours, and build up their experience to allow them to compete for those roles. We also support people to go back and do a management qualification, which is something that you would do, but for most of the graduates that go through the social care program, they won't need to do that because it'll be built into the level 8 degree. So the level 7 qualifies them as a social care worker, the level 8 qualifies them as a social care leader. So that's bringing them into the management grades.
Wow. And I'll ask you this then on behalf of the students, I suppose. What do you think makes the Muríosa Foundation a great place to work?
Oh God, so I joined the organisation almost 6 years ago, and I was only there a year when the pandemic hit. So we're really getting into that space now of, I still feel like I'm very new in the organisation. We have staff who have worked in the organisation for 40 plus years.
Wow.
So I think that's testament in and of itself.
I think it is.
Of being a good place to work. But I suppose more recently we're really focused on the kind of COVID recovery and the separation that we all experienced during the pandemic, and really bringing ourselves back together and thinking about happy workforce will ultimately mean better outcomes for the people that we support. So we're really focused on a project where we're developing values-led, co-created team working agreements with all of our staff and their individual teams. And it's really about how we are with each other, because if we work together in a very respectful way that values your contribution, even if what you want to say is challenging the status quo, that we can do that in a safe way, and that we can move things forward, that ultimately you'll feel motivated and enthusiastic about your work, and ultimately then the person that you support is going to benefit. Brilliant. So I suppose I really feel that Muríosa is on a journey now of really focusing on our staff as much as the people we support, because we wouldn't be able to do what we do if we didn't have our amazing staff.
100%. It's great to hear that. It's great to hear the appreciation for them as well, as you were saying. Siobhan, if anyone would like to follow up with you and ask any questions, where can they find you, or how can they get in contact? Okay, so to simplify things, what we'll do is we'll just create the central communication through info@muiríosa.ie. Brilliant.
So just because it's not a word that people are familiar with, Muríosa, so it's MUIRIOSA.ie. And then that will be triaged, and then depending on what the query is, it'll be sent to the relevant person, and we'll get back in contact. Just make sure you give us maybe some phone details that we can follow up with you.
Great. I've no doubt you're going to have a lot of inquiries after today.
Hopefully, we really hope so.
Brilliant. Siobhan, thank you so much for joining me on stage today. It's been great to hear from you.